Good afternoon. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming to our second seminar in our Trending Now Energy Storage Seminar Series. And we have a full house today, so very exciting. We can add more chairs, you have more people, and if you think the seminar is helpful, please let us know what you want to hear, what you want to learn, so we can incorporate those into our future seminars. And also share the information with your friends, colleagues, and bring them on. I know we have bigger conference room, we can definitely add more chairs here, so don't worry about the room size here. Appreciate you taking your weekend times to join us this afternoon. Today, again, we have an awesome full house audience and 3 great speakers. Dr. Van Dijk, our special advisor to Governor Brown, and also Vic Shao, the founder and chairman of NG Storage, formerly Green Charge. Mij Zhang, managing director of North America region at Sungrow, Samsung SDI Energy Storage Power Supply Corporation. They are going to talk about energy storage, from more focused on the policy, the entrepreneurship, business model, and the future opportunities here. The first seminar talked a lot about the overview, the technology development, and some research study. And in the future, what you want to hear, we want to know, so we can put those and also invite good speakers. Also, if you know someone in this area that you think has a really good knowledge and good background that can share their wisdom with us, do also let us know. So I'm looking forward to their talks and also a great discussion from everyone here. All right, energy storage. Why we want to talk about energy storage? What's so hot about it? Why we have so many people wanting to talk about it? I want to borrow an analogy that Haresh mentioned about during the first seminar. If you happen to be here, you know what I'm talking about. If not, hear what he says. Energy storage is something that we don't exactly know now what we will do with it. But same as when we first have the smartphones or even bottled water, that we don't think it's a necessity of our life. But think about now, are there 2 hours pass by you can live without your smartphones? Yeah, someone can do that? But probably that's already be an indispensable element of our life. So energy storage is becoming that. Energy storage, we know it is a key element. And also here's a quick review about the first seminar. We had, again, 3 great speakers. Jason Xu, who is also in the audience today. Thank you, Jason. And yeah, talked a lot about the flywheel, the technology side from Sycamore Venture. And also Haresh Kamath, the battery storage director, who is not here. He wanted to be here. We'll definitely share the slides and video with him later. From EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute. And also Mike Gravey talk from the CEC. So we had about the same group number, probably a little bit smaller, so we're getting bigger and bigger there. We're also the same hosting organizations here. Introduce briefly again.
Probably 1 minute for each organization. So thank you, Shanshan. It's a great opening. And I'm the local chair, Northern California chair for NACPPA. Our president is also there. Yeah, Boyang. Yeah. So this organization established in 2009. So far we have almost 9 years of history. And we have more than, I think, 1,000 members, and that across the industry, including research, academic, industry, working professionals, and some students. And I think this is a very bigger group, and some work in China, some work in the US, and all in the power and energy industry. So this is a great platform for communication and professional development. And for the activities, we have bi-weekly like a technical seminar on every Saturday, and we have a big like a WeChat. We have an email list for the member and the WeChat group. Always we public all these bi-weekly events on this platform. So also has an annual member meetup with the most of the time with the IEEE PS general meeting, and there are senior executive forum that has a panel discussion and collaborated with the IEEE PS. So that's a big event for this organization. That's an annual event. I think this year gonna happen in July or August? August time, right? August. And we also has a local chapter meetup. For example, this is one of the have to organize. There are 5 local organizations have this event together. So NACPPA is one of the 5. And in addition, we're gonna build a global talent pool, and we want to do some probably advertisement in this event. We have more than 1,000 members, and there are many talented people in this 1,000 members. But we want to get them together and have a greater database, and each of them, what's their expertise and what's their intention for their career. And so that after we have this talent pool, we believe for this organization we can move to the next higher step. Okay, I think that's all. For the next one, CIE.
Let me do it very quick. So I'm Yazhou Liu, the current chairman of the board for the San Francisco chapter Chinese Institute of Engineers. And Chinese Institute of Engineers was founded in 1917 by Zhang Tianyu, and right now we have 7 chapters. And last year we hosted the 100 years celebration, and I was in New York. Yulin Chao, the Secretary of Department of Transportation, was our keynote speaker. And in the national level, we have a biannual, it's twice every other year event since 1993 with China. It's a Sino-American Technology Engineering Conference. And in the national level, we host the Asian American Engineer of the Year event, which was hosted last month, actually earlier this month in New Mexico. And in the chapter level, we host many.
Good afternoon. I'm Xiaofeng Zhang for the U.S.-China Green Energy Council. So most I want to talk to everybody, share our information regarding 2018 U.S.-China Green Energy Summit. I'm the chair for this summit, so if you have anything want to contact for the conference, please contact me. Okay, so U.S.-China Green Energy Council was established in 2008. Currently is a 10-year celebration. So we have 5 areas for the development. So number 1 is smart grid. This is the reason we work with China State Grid and all the people in here. And we also have a session for the green IT, is more information development and artificial intelligence and so on. And also has smart transportation, electric car and so on. Also is very hot topics for this year's conference. And the renewable generation, this is also new area for the clean energy. So last section is green building, maybe energy efficiency. So UCGEC, what's the mission? So this is the non-profit organization, is approved by California government and also federal 501c3 non-profit. So most we doing the development, the platform for the government, industrial, business, investment. So we can share our experience and resources, and also doing some project match. So in the past, in the 10 years, so our first conference was in Beijing, 2008, and the second year is 2009 in the Silicon Valley. So after that, you can see in 2010 in China again, and 1 year in the Silicon Valley. So our last two conference, 2016, was in the Silicon Valley. We hosted in the Stanford University and the Marriott Hotel. So we invite Stephen Chu and famous speakers in our conference. Last year, we did a significant development, so have a big conference in Chengdu, Sichuan. So not only attractive by the panda, however, most attractive by the US experts, include famous professor from Stanford, Berkeley, and so on. So this year, we will talk about conference. So I spent a little more time about this. So date is August 3rd and 4th in the San Francisco area near the San Francisco Airport, Hyatt Regency Hotel. So the time is August 3rd afternoon and August 4th Saturday whole day. So currently we already invite a lot of famous speakers, and I'm really happy we have more co-organizers.
The other is a CSEE North American chapter. So I think most of you know CSEE, but for those who don't, let me briefly introduce. So CSEE, China Society for Electronical Engineering, is China's largest professional association in electronic engineering. It was founded in 1934, and in 1948 it moved to Beijing. It moved its headquarters to Beijing. Last year they established a North American chapter here in San Jose, and the secretary is our president, Zhi Wang. CSEE has 36 study committee and 9 working group committees. And last year,
Van Dai, Special Advisor to Governor Brown. The title of her talk today is about California-China Clean Tech Partnership. Dr. Van Dai has been appointed as Special Advisor to Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. since March 2017. Dr. Dai advises the governor on China and oversees state of California's China portfolio, include bilateral relationships, public policy, innovations, trade, and investment. Dr. Dai executed the governor's trip to China in June 2017. That's a big news back then. I remember a lot of news media coverage there. Resulted in successful meetings with President Xi Jinping and other Chinese senior leaders, as well as a new era of California-China Clean Energy Partnership consists of a U.S.-China Climate Institute, a network of CIE California-China Clean Tech Innovation Center, and a consortium of California-China Clean Energy Funds. So before joining governor's office, Dr. Dai was the climate change advisor to Secretary of California Environmental Protection Agency, Office of Secretary, and a specialist on international relationship and business at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development since 2014. She is a graduate of Berkeley Law, University of California, and holds a doctoral degree on environmental policy and economics from State University of New York. So please join me in welcome Dr. Dai.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to the organizers and North America, State Grid North America for having me today. I think, as I communicated with the organizer before, they asked me if you can speak for 30 minutes and if I have slides. I do have to apologize that I do not use slides where I'm talking, and I would not bore you out for 30 minutes. Just the purpose for me to be here today, I wish I have the same purpose as you do, that is basically networking to know new friends and also catch up with your old friends. I think it would be a shame for me, being the special advisor to governor, without knowing such group of you that are doing clean energy development, that are doing renewable energies projects in California. And some of you are probably Chinese or Chinese American. So I think the biggest purpose for me to be here is really to know you and to know hopefully every one of you. With that, I wanted to maybe just give you a very brief introduction of the state's work with China as I oversee California's collaboration with China in the past few years. And as the organizer just mentioned, that during the trip the governor did last year to China, we established a few new initiatives with China. And I would go into those in a little bit. So speaking about the state's relationship with China, I think we all know California now is basically the fifth biggest economy in the world, ranking after China, US, Japan, Germany. We just bypassed France and UK last year, so I'm very proud of that. But so such a big economy, and also we all understand the importance of China in the world economy, but also addressing climate change, which is the #1 priority that in the environment space both countries are facing between the United States and China. And California has a very long history of working with China in those areas, including what Chinese name it low carbon development. What we have here is a suite of policies that we address the climate change in California, also trying to improve the air quality here. So I have to say, it was before even I joined the state that there has already been many MOUs that the state entered with Chinese entities, including national ministries and also provinces and cities. I have been really, helping the governor since I joined last year on China, and his big trip last year really embarked a very new area of California-China partnership, which is really focusing on clean energy development, clean technology advancement. There are three major initiatives that we are executing. #1 is what we call the California-China Climate Institute. It's an initiative announced during his trip in Beijing, and it's an initiative that is actually implemented by Tsinghua University and University of California. The goal of that institute is to provide a platform for experts like you guys and also more officials from China and California side being able to communicate to each other, being able to share their policy experiences, to talk about the challenges, and also work together on a lot of policy topics. And the second initiative that I want to mention here today is what we call the Clean Tech Innovation Network. It's a network established between California and China. On the California side, we have implementing partners from the 4 clean tech clusters, namely the LACI, LA Clean Tech Incubator, Sacramento Road, based in Berkeley, and Fresno, which is called Blue Tech Valley, focusing on water and clean air technologies, and also Clean Tech San Diego. So these are the 4 clean tech clusters that are very involved in developing of the clean tech innovation centers, are currently based in China. So we launched one center in Beijing last June. We launched one center in Shenzhen last November. We are hoping to launch the other 2 clean tech innovation centers this year, one in Sichuan province, city of Chengdu, and the other one in Jiangsu province, the city of Nanjing. The major task for those clean tech innovations are basically serving as free landing space for California companies going to China that are searching for opportunities in clean tech space without, renting space in China without really have to test out whether or not their business model can work in China. So it's really for California business benefit that they have those innovation centers could serve as their landing place when they first got to China. Also, for the Chinese side, we're trying to use those as pilot programs for the Chinese because they have a lot of needs from clean air technologies, energy efficiency technologies, and other renewable areas technologies, including storage that we're talking about today. So we are working as a team here in California trying to build a pipeline of California-based technologies and projects that have the interest and potential to go to China. And on their side, they're working on a program that will be beneficial for both sides to test out whether those technologies would work in China, especially at different provinces. And the third component I'm going to talk about today about our collaboration with China is what we call a consortium of clean tech funds. It's basically our intent to really utilize the public-private partnership model, trying to get more capital resources that could be used to support early-stage technology companies in California, but also help them scaling up their business in China. With those capital support and commitment from both public sector and private sector players, they can do well in China. And also the Chinese companies are looking at this opportunity to really have more engagement in California, especially around investment front. I know, and I don't want to offer any comment today here about the recent US-China trade complication. I don't think that's a good venue to talk about that, but we are aware of a lot of challenges on Chinese investment coming into the US, and California has been the #1 destination for a lot of Chinese investment, especially in the recent years in renewable and clean technology space. So what we are trying to do here is, as a state, we welcome opportunities from China. We welcome investment from China to help us also advance California's own industry. But we also aware of the CFIUS restrictions and challenges, and also many of you know very well about other challenges might present in this near future, and with all the uncertainties on trade and investment. But I think the goal is simple, and we have a very nimble team at the state level. We are in the process of establishing our China program. By name, it could be the state's one-stop shop for all the Chinese engagement. We're here to help, and I think it would be great for you to let me know what we can be more helpful to help you, and also what you can help in terms of bringing more Chinese companies' investment and interest into California, and we would try our best to facilitate those opportunities moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Dai. Dr. Dai, just one second. Let Yazhou present our appreciation of Black for the next hour.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Dr. Dai, driving all the way from state capital, Sacramento, to here and attend today's event. I know several from the audience also driving probably equally or even longer distance from your home to here. Thank you for coming. It's very interesting. I usually don't have a good feeling about state office like DMV, right? But I was sitting there listening what Dr. Dai mentioned, what California is doing and has been doing in the past several years that working in China. They're ahead of us, covering both policy side, business side, investment side. So maybe we can contribute maybe technology side or working together on the other side to move forward together. So that's a great opportunities. We hope to have you back in the near future to bring us an update on some progress there, and hopefully maybe a couple of companies from the audience today will have a collaboration in those centers and join partnership there. Okay. Now we're gonna gather all questions in the panel discussion. The title of his talk is Clean Tech Entrepreneurship. Vic Shao is the founder and chairman of Energy Storage, formerly known Green Charge. Over the course of 9 years, Vic grew the company from an idea all the way to successful acquisition in April 2016 by Engie, the largest independent power producer in the world. Prior to Green Charge, Vic held management positions at various enterprise cloud computing companies, including Oracle. Vic holds an MBA from UC Berkeley High School of Business and an engineering degree from the University of Virginia. We all know entrepreneurship is hard, and starting a clean energy business probably is even harder because the capital investment needed a policy-driven industry. So we are very fortunate here today to have Vic, who has not only successfully launched and executed the business focused on energy storage, but are generous to share with us his findings along the journey and insights for the future. So please join me welcome Vic Shao.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the welcome, and it's good to be here today. I think we forgot to thank a very special person in the room earlier today, and that's the pizza guy back there. So, thank you, pizza guy. I do have to give a shout out to the California State as well. I think, look, it's the California State on the policy side is probably the most advanced thinking in the country, certainly. And I myself, in my company, Green Charge, in the very early days, we received a grant from California Energy Commission's CEC, and that's really one of the things that launched my company, 5-6 years ago. Anyway, so without further ado, I'll get started. So just an introduction, thank you. Introduction about Green Charge, and it's now known as Energy Storage, and who we are and what we do. So Engie as an organization is a multinational conglomerate, energy conglomerate. It's probably the biggest, it is I think the biggest in the world, operating in 70 countries, 66 billion euros annual turnovers, and they own a lot of power plants. They have a thriving energy business that's like a lot of the majors in the world. They are all transitioning their fleet from coal, from nuclear into renewables, and meeting successes and failures along the way. But Engie is really one of the biggest out there. Green Charge, or now known as Engie Storage, I started the company about 9 years ago, and we have been chugging along over the course of nine years, and now by this point in time, multiple hundred units running throughout the country, a lot of deployments in California, in Massachusetts as well, and soon to be in New Jersey, New York. A lot of the states now are following California's lead in deploying energy storage and setting targets and mandates for energy storage penetration. But now that we are part of Engie, we're also starting to pursue opportunities on a global basis now as well. And that's really the acquisition thesis from Engie 2 years ago, is to use the platform that we have created to scale globally. And so, we have a lot of customers, some of which you would recognize, a lot of C&I, commercial industrial customers, and probably some that are not, household names, spread out throughout throughout the world. So you know, the topic of my talk today is, you know, I will introduce you to what we do and the system and how it works and all of that. But I thought it would be more interesting to talk about energy entrepreneurship, because I really think that this is an area that, even though we are starting to have more and more attention on this, I think there's still a significant amount that the energy community can focus on, is entrepreneurship and how it works. I mean, look, it's really, really hard to start an energy company, especially in the Bay Area. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs focus on software, and certainly that was my background as well. With software, it's relatively simpler, right? You don't have cost of goods sold, you don't have inventory, and a lot of entrepreneurs that, you know, certainly in the Bay Area, they forget about that when they start out in energy. They forget about that they need to raise, you know, not only equity capital, but, you know, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, and having to deal with a lot of loan sharks out there that provide that capital to unproven energy solutions. So, you know, what I've learned to appreciate over the years is, you know, what finally gets you success is just plowing ahead when everybody gives up and everybody quits. So that's one of the things that I learned the hard way over the past 9 years. I'll give you my own personal story. I think you'll get an appreciation for what it takes. So the company 9 years ago was really started on a grant project that I had developed in Con Edison of New York, which is the public utilities for New York City. And we, you know, back in those days, if you remember going back to those days, for those of us that were working in the States back then, you know, 2008, 2009, 2010, I mean, that you know, it was economic depression in this country, right, back then. And the Obama administration came out with a smart grid innovation program, ARRA, Recovery Act, to innovate smart grid, to develop, you know, smart grid innovation technologies. And that was one of the grant proposals that we had applied for at the time, in partnership again with Con Edison of New York. And we were fortunate to have been granted that, and that's how we started the company actually 9 years ago. So the thesis behind the grant project was, you know, it was certainly in energy storage, but the thesis was that, you know, the DOE has been doing this all wrong all these years and all these decades, because the way that DOE has solicited for energy storage projects in the past is they write a RFP document that says, you know, we want the storage system to do 10 different use cases, right? And we want, and then they get responses that promise to do 5 of those 10, and ultimately delivering on maybe 2 of those applications, but not doing it very well. And certainly, you know, this looks like this big Frankenstein-looking thing towards the end, and, you know, and it's super expensive also. And so the thesis for the grant project was, let's look at it from a different angle. Let's focus and target, you know, not 10 things, you know, just 1, maybe 2, and have a private-public partnership, you know, installing it behind the meter, selling it to commercial industrial customers. And why would commercial industrial customers want anything to do with energy storage? Well, because it's economical. There's a payback period. There's an ROI for the project. And, you know, and the business case back then was centered around demand charge reduction, and it's still a very core part of our business today. Now, you know, 9 years later, we are tackling a lot of the rest of those 10 use cases. But the whole concept was, you know, let's focus and do one thing and execute it on it perfectly. So we were chugging along on this grant project, and it was, you know, 2012. We had promised the DOE, that we were going to install 12 systems all throughout New York City. We were well short of that, as it turns out. We were towards the tail end of the project, and we had only installed about 8. We were, maybe 4 systems short. The reason we were short is because we couldn't get Department of Buildings approval and the permits required to deploy in New York City. It's impossible to deploy anything in New York City, as we learned. And so it wasn't really our fault, right, in a way. But nonetheless, the DOE wasn't paying our invoices. And so we were hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole for a small little upstart company like ourselves. So at the time, I had a business partner, and my business partner gave up. He's like, oh, Vic, I'll take what's in the bank account, and the company's yours. Here are the keys. Have fun. And so that ultimately was the deal that I had struck with him. Now, going back a little bit, some more background into this particular scenario was that the DOE project is a 50-50 cost share project, right? So this entire time that we were on this program, I was getting paid half, right, of my market value, and the rest being, the cost share component from the company. And certainly before this grant project, when we were really bootstrapping, I wasn't getting paid anything, right? And so going into this, I did the deal with my partner at the beginning of the month. At the end of the month, I would have to chip in, $50,000 to pay my employees. That was really the decision staring right at me at that point in time. And so I remember this scenario really well because it was August, and it was my 40th birthday. So on my 40th birthday, as a birthday present, I asked my wife to chip in $50,000 so that I can pay my employees for the month and continue the business, right? So, luckily I'm still married. Everything worked out. But I was able to renegotiate the situation with the DOE, and I helped them to understand what this is all about, and the company survived. And for clean energy entrepreneurship, look, not just only clean energy, but entrepreneurship in general, I think you run into multiple of these types of moments of crisis, right? And it is the difference between making it and not, oftentimes, is how you handle these moments of crisis and being able to overcome and survive. So anyway, that was my own personal story at the time. As to why clean energy entrepreneurship is important, well, I think all of us are well aware of the situation, right? You have Puerto Rico getting wiped out by a storm, and they're still having blackouts today, more than a year later, or just about a year later. We've had flooding in Texas, and certainly the wildfires last year at PG and East Territory that is looking like it's caused by the overhead reclosers, power lines. So there are definitely issues in the grid that require some amount of innovation. And you guys, I talk about New Delhi here, but it is just as applicable to cities in Beijing. And just for perspective, a year ago when I was in Beijing in the wintertime, it was, it wasn't as bad as this, but it wasn't too far off actually. But when I went back to Beijing 3 months ago in January, just night and day difference. It was blue skies, it was beautiful, and just remarkable in a year's time of how everything has changed. So, obviously, solar penetration, and I think, well, it was kind of a forced function, right, this past year in Beijing. I think the government mandated that all the burning of coal and everything kind of got turned off at the time. But nonetheless, I think China is making progress. So look, I think the reason for why all of us do this is that it works, and there is a lot to be done, and there's a lot of opportunities. More specifically now on energy storage and green charge, and how our system kind of found a niche for ourselves in the whole landscape is that we deploy energy storage systems, and we sell to commercial industrial customers. And what we encounter is that more and more these days, C&I customers, more than half of their energy bill every month is demand charges. It's not kilowatt hours, it's kilowatts. That's true for a lot of businesses in California that are in PG&E's territory, Southern Cal Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric. And so I'm just using one particular example from a high school in San Diego, I think in this case. So the summer peak hours start in June in San Diego, and it's $45 a kilowatt. It's punitive, So in a normal situation in the summertime, there really should not have been all that much going on. So for the most part, the schools are, they don't pay as much in demand. In this particular case, though, that I'm pointing out, so it's a week, the horizontal axis is a week in time. Every one of those little humps are supposed to be weekdays, but as you can see, there really isn't much going on. For a building that's normally peaking at 650 kilowatts, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they were only doing about 150. So, the kids aren't in school. There isn't much going on. But on that Friday, all of a sudden the building spiked. And what we learned afterwards is that they had a sporting event at 5 o'clock, right before the cutoff for the peak time of use, actually. And they turned on the stadium lights, and the whole building spiked to about, the red is what the building ended up doing, 650 kilowatts. And thankfully, our energy storage system was on site. It shaved that peak. I think the graph over there is a zoom in on that particular day and how the system handled itself. It pretty much bottomed out. There is a little curve there that went from 100% down to nothing, and it charged itself back up. But that peak ended up being a $14,000 peak that we helped the school save. It ended up being a $14,000 sporting event. If the school actually knew how they were being charged by energy, they probably would have canceled that event altogether. So that's what we're dealing with all across the board for a lot of our customers. In fact, I was in Denver earlier this week, and a customer showed me their bill, and it was 80% demand charges. Unbelievable, unbelievable. I mean, it's punitive what these customers are seeing out there. So anyway, that's ended up being what we're doing, how we're helping our customers. We don't manufacture the hardware, we buy the systems on the market, and what we do is we apply the software and the intelligence and the predictive algorithms on top, so that we've got hundreds of these deployed, and we have to monitor every 15 minutes what's going on with the building, and to push a button to shave the peak or something. I mean, it's not feasible, right? So all of this is being computer controlled, automated, and if you were to visit our control room on a normal business day, there's nobody in the room at all. All the lights are switched off, and that's because everything is kind of running by themselves and controlled by themselves. Just a couple of case studies. So I showed you a school earlier. Kaiser is a customer of ours, and we signed a master agreement with Kaiser. And what it essentially says is Kaiser has about 600 buildings in California. And what the master agreement essentially says is look through our entire portfolio of real estate buildings, and here's all the data. And if you find a particular site or any number of sites to be economical for you to deploy a storage system on, go ahead and propose it to us, and we'll just add that site as an addendum to the master contract. And if it doesn't need to be right away, we could all of a sudden 5 years from now, tariffs have changed or whatever the case may be, we'll add a site to the master agreement. It's an open-ended master agreement contract. So, phase one, we deployed seven buildings, and it ended up being, it's not $8 of savings, it's $8 million of savings over 10 years. And that's 7 out of 600 buildings. So obviously we have a long ways to go with Kaiser. We're also starting to deploy much larger systems. In this case, Holyoke Gas and Electric is a municipal city in Massachusetts. They also, they're on the front of the meter, but as it turns out, they have a very similar constraint. They pay an annual peak charge to ISO New England, the transmission operator. And so also a very similar situation, but instead on a monthly peak shaving cycle, we have to nail their annual peak. And it's not like they tell you exactly when the annual peak's going to be ahead of time. You have to predict, forecast, and shave it reliably. So that's the bulk of the revenue generation for that project. But going back to what I said earlier about multiple use cases, for this project, there are actually 5 different revenue streams, peak shaving being one of them. Energy arbitrage. We're also doing energy arbitrage. We're doing, ISO demand response calls, and so the system is reacting to multiple use cases using the same asset. So I'm kind of going full circle from what the promise of energy storage was initially when we started the company. Energy entrepreneurship now again. So just wrapping up the session and my talk, there is just a tremendous amount of things that can be done today. A lot of it is driven by solar, obviously. Just for those of you that are not familiar with the solar story, really in the course of the last 3, 4, 5 years, the price of solar has dropped down to the level that it might as well be an unlimited data plan. It might as well be all you can consume, because it's getting to the point where it's too cheap to meter. I mean, just several watermarks that I'll mention. So the production cost of natural gas is at about 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So forget about, and the production cost of coal is about 3.2 cents a kilowatt hour. So forget about those plants that were already built. I'm just talking about processing the fuel that goes into these plants. Solar is now cheaper. And the next watermark at about 2.8 cents is the average cost of running an energy efficiency program. Solar is now below that. So really what it means is you might as well just keep all the lights turned on and keep your air conditioning full blast, because it's cheaper than to actually try to switch it off. And that's the world that we're entering into. And if you look at, again, from comparison, solar versus other types of fuel, whether it's natural gas, the Henry Hub natural gas market, and coal and crude oil, LNG, solar. I mean, all the other fuels over the last 60 years, they bounce up and down a little bit from year to year, from quarter to quarter. But solar, it's like, you know, a kindergartner just took a crayon and scrolled down the page or something. That's really what the pricing have been. It's quite remarkable. Storage is following the exact same trajectory. If you look at the pricing for storage as it has unfolded over the last 7 years, it's following right along so what the solar market has done. So the combination of those two, is, I think, what's interesting and what's going to drive a lot of innovation. Another point I would make is the U.S. government, EIA, Energy Information Agency, has been forecasting year after year what solar adoption would look like. And they've been doing this for a long time, for the last 20 years or more. Every year they have been off. They have been too conservative. And this, it's really in the last couple of years that they have finally caught up to what the actual hockey stick has turned out to be. Again, storage is probably going to follow this exact scenario as well. I would mention that while there is a lot of enthusiasm and optimism, we also do have to overcome. I went to business school at Berkeley, and so this is one of my favorite topics from my MBA class, crossing the chasm. And so solar, I think, is in the early majority portion of this now, and it's still hasn't peaked out yet. Actually, it's still got a long ways to go. But along the way, there are a lot of companies, solar companies, that didn't make it, right? I mean, I just went to Green Tech Media and I copy and pasted some of the names of solar companies that didn't make it, and there is a lot of them. For every solar city, for every First Solar, SunPower, there are 100 solar companies that didn't quite make it. And storage is not even the early majority yet. It's early adopters still. A lot of early adopters companies that are trying it. There is a big scary chasm that's ahead, whether that's created by business model innovation or technology that is not yet quite proven yet, and it's deployed and it fails. A lot of things the industry still needs to overcome, I think, over the next decade. So, final thoughts. There is really no better time to be an energy entrepreneur. I think when you couple solar and wind and energy storage and software, we can start to see an outcome where it's 100% clean and 100% renewable. I think we can be free of fossil fuel, really, in our lifetime. It's, I think, very real. It's a very real scenario. And I think the people in this room are going to make it happen. Thanks.
Let's have Yazhou present our appreciation plate. Vic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vic, for sharing with us the excitements and also scary situations through his journey. And I want to borrow something from Vic's talk earlier, that when you see problems, I see opportunities. So definitely there are a lot of challenges we're facing, but also lots of opportunities. So now it's time to see who are committed enough and brave enough to jump in to be that early adopter and make it happen sooner to the majority adopter later on. Just one thing about the solar industry, since Vic mentioned that. The topic of his talk today is energy storage solutions in commercial and industrial and solar plus storage. Miji Zhang currently holds the position of Managing Director of North America region at Sungrow Samsung SDI Energy Storage Power Supply Company, a SunPower Samsung SDI joint venture. Before he took this assignment to lead the energy storage business, he was the CEO of Sungrow North America from 2012 to 2017. Miji Zhang joined Sungrow in 2012 with a background in leadership in areas including R&D, product development, and project management. Miji successfully led Sungrow PV inverter business from a new entrant to a gigawatt player in North America. Before joining Sungrow, Miji was the engineering manager at Satcom Technologies Corporation, where he successfully helped to launch PowerGate and the Equinox series products that once had the largest market share in the utility market in the US. Miji is also a professional engineer and holds a Master of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from Dalhousie University in Halifax, Canada. So in this session, Miji will talk about how energy storage solutions help to solve the real-world problems for commercial and industrial customers. Applications, like Vic mentioned, the promised applications of peak shaving, demand charge management, energy arbitrage, and capacity support. In addition to C&I market, how storage system can contribute to smooth the renewable generation and help stabilize the grid with the increasing PV penetration level. Miji will be able to use Sungrow energy storage turnkey solutions and current installation as examples, real examples, to provide a deep dive in this topic. I'm also looking forward to hear his opinions on energy storage opportunities and the challenges ahead. So let's welcome Miji Zhang.
Thank you, everyone. So today's my great honor to be here. Actually, I think it was very motivating, and also to hear Dr. Dai and Vic. It's very passionate, the journey, entrepreneurship, and how to really. So I think they would talk about policy, they talk about entrepreneurship. I think we were, follow the same curve, starting from the PV. I started my PV career way back 2007. That's where the PV was just started. I still remember we had a similar discussion about where the solar will be in the future, and how we're looking to the next 5 years, where solar going to be. Now, it's time we talk about storage. So I want to re-emphasize that I think the storage will happen sooner than everybody would expect. Is because we have great professionals in the industry that working in the same and with the passionate to really drive the business and drive the industry. So I think we touch a lot on the policy side, entrepreneurship and business case, and also the business model. So it's like for Sungrow, Samsung, and what we can talk about. I think application, the product, and how the storage system can really solve the real world problem, including what the host just mentioned about the C&I application, peak shaving, renewable energy integration, PV plus storage. So every application has its wonderful story behind it. So the purpose about this presentation is not to really get into very deep of each special case, but just give you a little bit background intro, and maybe if you have more specific questions, you come back to me, then we can have more detailed conversation. So yeah, before we go into that, just the content of my presentation today is, first of all, the of course Sungrow introduction, which I most likely obligated to do that, and I will talk about market segmentation and all the 4 main category of where the energy storage can be a big play in the segments. Sungrow. Okay, Sungrow is a Chinese manufacturer which is located in Hefei, China. So we have about 5,000 people, and we are one of the largest inverter manufacturer of the world. So we have 4 main business pillars: PV, wind, energy storage, and EV drives. So our bread and butter is power conversion business. So this picture shows you is about the marriage we have with Samsung SDI. So in 2016, we had a JV factory in China, Hefei. It's about a 20 minutes drive west of our main campus. So this is a campus manufacturing facility that we hold together with Samsung SDI, who make the lithium-ion battery too. So as you can see, there's two buildings there. One is making the battery modules, the other is making the integration and also the power converter. So the annual capacity is 2 gigawatts a year for the battery and 3 gigawatts for the inverter and also for the integration. So Sungrow has the largest and the best manufacturing facility and also the hardware testing platform in China. People talk about Sungrow, people always think about you guys making PV inverters and all that, but very interestingly, Sungrow started the power conversion business way back almost 20 years ago. That was the first off-grid energy storage power supply system we supplied to Xinjiang Railway with energy signal power supply. So very interesting, way back 20 years ago, people think it's lead acid, off-grid, and remote area electrification. So that's what we do. And at that time, the storage is already in our life, but we just don't realize it, right? So until all the way we had accomplished a few key projects that we had in Tibet, we had in the High Plateau, and also we have in the Shanghai Yangshan Harbor, which we're using supercapacitor to discharge to meet the fast peak of the crane operations in Shanghai Harbor. So in 2015, we signed a JV with Samsung SDI, and 2016, I will talk about that project more specifically. That's in Tibet. That was a 24 megawatts hour microgrid PV plus storage we had in Tibet mountain, which is over 5,000 meters in elevation. So this is Sungrow global roadmap. So over 60 gigawatts has been deployed over in more than 55 countries. Projects, all storage. So as I said, people think about storage as training, but I think it's happening right now. No matter where you go to island, you go to resort, you go to Bahamas, you go to Hawaii, it's got storage everywhere. No matter lead acid, flywheel, flow, and lithium. Okay, so I will also talk about the market segmentation. In terms of the storage and also its application, the big difference between the storage and the solar, from my personal perspective, is really about how you use the storage to solve the real world problem. Every market segmentation, it has its own economic model. And this is how, I guess, Vic also mentioned about how to drive the business is to have economic model behind it, and how the policy driven, how the economic driven. So right now, as you can see from total available market for the whole energy storage, we can see there's a small CNI, as Vic mentioned about the Kaiser, schools, hospitals, as they pay a lot, 50%, 80% demand charge management, to the large CNI, as we can see in Ontario, Canada, they have a global adjustment charge with five days of peak every year, so people pay $1 million for the peak hour charges. So for the large CNI into what we call that series service, as you can see from PJM territory, that you have storage system in place to really help with voltage and frequency regulations, to where you see in Massachusetts that using a storage to help with the stabilize the grid and get into the renewable integration to smooth out the peak, and also for the bulk energy shifting. Right? So for every different market sectors, and we have product for that market. So those are the products we offer, 250, 500 turnkey solutions, and also this is megawatts level with a container, 40-foot container. So the largest container we have is 4.2 megawatts hour. So the technology is evolving. Way back 5 years ago, you feel like megawatts storage, that must be a jumbo size. But as you can tell right now, a 40-foot sea ocean container, which can hold 4.2 megawatts hour of the battery. Very high energy density, thanks to a lot of innovative technology, integration, thermal management, and all that. So that's what we do, is putting the battery, conversion, thermal control, and everything into one very compact package to really provide a real value to our customers. Okay, so in the next, I'm going to talk about the real market segmentations. which I think is very interesting. Also, I would like to make this more like interactive. Maybe later after the presentation, you can raise your question to me about where you can see energy storage can be a fit. I'm just trying to give you a few cases right here when we go through the what we call the energy internet, renewable energy integration, behind the meter CNI application, and also the microgrid in the remote area. And for each of these sectors, I will give you 1 or 2 projects we have done in the past. Perhaps that will give you a more idea of how the energy storage can resolve the real problem. So what is energy internet? People are talking about the energy industrial revolution, the steam machine, electrification. At the time, Nikola Tesla invented electricity. So the way to generate electricity and to transmit electricity has never been changed. So it's a generator, generate electricity and pass it through the wire and deliver into your home, the household, every consumer. So as you can see right now, even we have different form of resources for generation, no matter it's wind, solar, and coal power plant, is always going through distribution, transmission network, and get into your home. So this is old type of centralized power network, which utility take a lot of balance, because the nature of electricity is you have to match with the generation versus the consumption, right? There's no means of storage. So the utility has to do a lot of work to really balance the power is generated to where the power is being consumed. So when the technology start evolving, people start install all type of different sensors along the transmission line, along the meters, and send a signal back for utility to determine when should I turn on how many gas turbines to really meet the different load curves. So that's why you see there is more and more smart technologies and also smart grid that will be a big play in the future. So I think that's where I think energy storage can be a very interesting play in the market. It's not because it can shift energy, but more importantly, it will become a very important binding node for every different resources that can work together. So namely, in the future, we believe that the energy storage system with distributed generation system will be driven by 3 main things from my personal perspective. First of all is the deployment of the electrical vehicle. As we can see that in China and in US, electrical vehicle become more and more common. There's data shows that if we change out every single car on the street with electrical vehicle, the electrical consumption will be tripled of the electricity consumption what we're using right now. As you can imagine, with tripled electrical consumption, there's lots of infrastructure update. There's lots of infrastructure, and also there's investment into the utility. And as a matter of fact, right now you see lots of peaker plant, right? So those plants not running 24 hours a day. It's only maybe running one day a week, or maybe 1 day a month, which has lots of infrastructure investment. So a lot of the money you paid out of electrical bill is actually come from those peaker plants. They have to keep idling to meet where the peak is. So that's where the storage, I think that will become a very important play into the whole scheme, into the whole deviation. Is in the future, every load is not a load anymore. It's become a contributor to the grid, right? And every household is a small generation unit that able to trade with your neighbors. So that's relate to my second opinion is about the blockchain. The blockchain is decentralization of our trading platform that will enable a new business model, a new software that will enable a lot of people not being a consumer but also being a producer that can help with the community. And a smart technology that enable the whole community, community solar co-op program coupled with the storage to form an island that is independent of the utility to making sure everybody has furnace, TV, turn on, electricity, and all that. So with all that, I think the future is very promising, and the future is now. So that's why we call it energy internet. And of course, there's lots of attributes. I'm not going to speak a lot about those attributes of the future of the energy internet and what is the necessary things and what we can do under the future energy internet. In terms of technology for the energy internet, there's the 3 layers of the things that we need to focus on. First is, I think, is applications. So from the generation to T&D deferral, or call that transmission and distribution transmissions, and also for the behind the meter from consumer side. On every sections, energy storage has a play. From generation side, energy storage become a database. Energy storage become not only become a unit that can generate power, but more importantly, that can also support and take from whatever available on the transmission. And from the transmission side, energy storage become a buffer zone. We'll see in the eastern part of the United States, Dominion territory, you'll see there's congestion problems, demand problems everywhere. So that's where energy storage can be a big play, is as a big reservoir, taking the energy, whenever you don't need it, and whenever you need it, I can give you the energy whenever you need it to solve the capacity problem and also congestion problems. More importantly, at every transmission node, energy storage can be a very good supporting point for your voltage and for your frequency to really smooth and stabilize your grid. Right? So back to the load side, energy storage become a firewall. So if you install an energy storage system at your household, then if there's a blackout, and you can form yourself an island that can support yourself, and also you can be less dependent on the grid, and also can really help with the optimization of this distributed generation and the whole mesh network. Okay, so that's I would like to cover on the energy internet. Next part is, the application is more on the renewable energy integration. I guess a lot of audience may have some interesting point about the PV plus storage. As a matter of fact, PV plus storage has been very, very hot topic recently. Is because of the cost of solar is really driving to very competitive level that can be able to compare with coal power generation, even with cogen, thermal, and other resources. More importantly, with PV plus storage, this is the only way that can really enable the PV to compete with other resources, right? So one of the big drawbacks from the PV is it's generating most of the power during the day, and that might not be the time that you're using the power. So there is a time gap where the supply and demand. So this is how energy storage can be a big play to fulfill the gap. So I think we covered enough about the business model. I just want to very briefly go through the application side. On the energy storage side, right now, in the market, we have 2 main solutions. One is called AC coupled solution. The other is called a DC coupled solution. So there's a lot of article talk about the difference between the AC coupled solution versus DC coupled solution, pros and cons. I'm not in the place to really dive into a lot of detail, but on very high level, in Massachusetts Smart Program and other, North Carolina and also in California, also one of the, ESA conference we just announced, the Stirring project, which is the first community solar project in Massachusetts, which Sangro has been part of the project to help with the community in Massachusetts. First one is AC coupled solution. So the benefit about AC coupled solutions is very obvious. Is easy integration. It's AC coupled, so pretty much you can install on the AC grid anywhere you want, right? And it's flexibility, so it can be added anytime you want. And third is about the grid support, because it's AC connected, so you have a lot of interaction, charge and discharge with grid, so you can help with voltage and also with frequency regulations, right? So that's the main benefit of AC coupled solution. Of course, there's cons. Is AC coupled solution has 2 inverters, not only the PV inverter, but also the storage inverter. There's round trip efficiency, so the efficiency would be lower compared with the DC coupled solution. As you can see from here, is your PV panel and your storage, they share the same DC bus, right? So the good thing about DC coupled solution is, first of all, the capex is lower compared with the AC solution, and also it's easy to retrofit into the existing PV system. We have lots of old PPAs, old PV plant, which we think will be very economic to add storage. Consider degradation, consider the high PPA ratio, consider the power containment, and consider the clipping of the power. So there's an economical model to play. in those areas, so that people look into DC coupled solution, right? And also about efficiency, because this only goes through one stage of convergence, not going back to the grid and back to the power, back to the battery. So the efficiency you gain maybe 2 or 3% efficiency. So that's a return of 3% right away. And also about the interconnection, because you put everything behind the inverter, so there's nothing changed on the AC side. Pretty much when you find interconnection with National Grid or PG&E or any of the utility company, that you're not limited by putting additional interconnection capacity into your application, and which might be a big adder or enabler for lots of projects that need to be put a storage in there. So this is our solution for the DC coupled solution. Again, because we manufacture battery, PCS, and the control. So we would able to put everything in one box, in one C container, with the lithium and NMC technology with Samsung, and our DC-DC conversion technology, and also with control, fire suppression, and HVAC system in one box. Talk about renewable integration. So quickly go through the four main advantage of the DC coupled solution. As I said, clipping. So if you have lots of DC panels, panel DC to AC is 1.3, 1.4, and using DC coupled solution would be well situated to absorb the shaded air of the energy into the battery. And whenever the utility was back up or the later part of the day, when I need the demand or capacity, I can discharge my battery to support it. And the second is about energy shifting, as we mentioned about the peak hour of the day, and this is where you can absorb the solar power generation during the peak hour of the day and support it to the later part. And also with smoothing and ramping controls, as you can see, in most of the states, such as Massachusetts and California, the solar penetration ratio become higher and higher. And it is very natural when the clouds come by and there's fluctuation of the power, which causes lots of instability to the grid. So that's where the energy storage can play. And whenever you have the ramping rate control, the excess generation from the solar side can be stored in the storage for temporary purposes, right? Whenever the power gets ramped up, and then they can extract it from the battery to support the grid. The last, the function on the DC side is all about power containment. So this is especially true that in China, actually we have the largest DC coupled solution installed in the Gansu province, which is about 100 megawatts solar and different phases of DC plus storage system in there. Is in the western part of China, that's where the power, all the resources that are located, but there's no load. So everything has to be, boost up the high medium volt and being transported to eastern part of the China. So there's a power containment. There's a limiting power. So the solution we had is to store the energy for 2 hours during the curtailment time, and whenever the transmission capacity opens up, and we just back to the grid. And where it turns out to be has a very good economic model. So this is a picture. The storage project we did in the Gansu Jinchang, I think that was the owner, is public information, is Icon Solar, different phases. So the first phases we installed, as you can see, there's two 20-foot container boxes in there. So that's where it's I think it was 400 kilowatts, 1.1 megawatts hour of the DC block, to retrofit into the existing PV plant. So it turned out to be, it's very economic and very easy to retrofit into the existing power plant. Behind the meter. So yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time behind the meter. I think Vic has already covered a lot. With peak shaving, the arbitrage, apparently there's lots of benefit of the shaving the peak and move into the later date, and also there's about a capacity aggregation. So one thing I would like to point out is about a capacity aggregation is this is very, very important part of the future smart grid, as we can see that you have different nodes, you have different where everybody can generate. Traditionally, if the utility want to meet the upgrade, the capacity, they want to install a generation site that is able to meet the increasing peak of local community because the load is increasing. So what we do here is using the software to to detect each individual household where you have distributed generations and able to dispatch every single site together to able to contribute the capacity. So that is provide a multiple benefit. Number one is there's a T&D deferral. The utility does not need to put a new generation set into the community to support increasing demand. Number two, this aggregation can solve a lot of grid problems, which in the past has to use a different way to solve it. So this is really a big enabler for the distributed generation with energy storage that able to dispatch very flexibly in order to meet the increasing demand of the load. And also on the generation side and also on load side that you can see storage can do a lot of things. Can replace the traditional static VAR generations. You know, we don't have to install big inductor anymore, big capacitor anymore. We can use energy storage to input a lot of VAR generation to really compensate the power factor problems, frequency problems. So those are all the benefits that the energy storage can contribute. And also that linked to another topic is how we can monetize each energy storage project. Right? As you can see, there's lots of value, but the value has not yet to be recognized by lots of major utility companies. And how would you measure that? How would you monetize it into the financial model? How would you get paid for it? So I think that's something that I would urge everybody in this audience that think about it. So there's a business to make, but yet there's a lot of challenges, roadblock in front of us. We all have to pay attention and think, be innovative. It's pretty much no-brainer. That's where the energy storage started. Is in the desert, in the very heavy plateau, in the island. That's where it's very hard to pull electrical wire into that area. So that's where the PV and the storage firstly launched. And we have application in the island, in the Taiping Island, in the China South Sea, to replace the diesel generations. And recently, there's a big initiative of the energy storage plus gas turbines, diesel gensets, is because you have multiple diesel gensets, and every diesel genset needs a ramping time. So the energy storage will be a big play in between those gensets to ramping up, provide 30-minute services. And that helps a lot to reduce the fuel and also improve the system operation of the whole site with diesel gensets. And we're playing a big part of it too. So pretty much low fuel cost, lower reliability, and non-environmental friendly. That's all drawback of the diesel gensets. So with the PV plus storage, that can solve all the problem. So this picture, beautiful picture that we shoot in Tibet Mountain, that was a project we commissioned in 2016 with Shuanghu County, which is in Tibet. I've never been there before, but I heard it's very hard. No oxygen at all. People shoulder breeze there, and thanks to the team that able to finish that great project in such a short period of time in an extreme cold climate, and able to bring the power to the people that have a little power or even without power in the entire life. So we're very proud to be the part of it. Bring the power. So the whole system is 24 megawatts hour in terms of storage. 7 megawatts, that's a storage power, and also there's 14 meg of the PV. So the whole system and local load, I mean 7,000 people's small town, the whole load is only like 1 megawatt. As you can imagine, there's almost no appliances. They're almost just little lights they can turn on every day, which is very sad. When I look at it, it's very sad. But a year later, look at right now, the power is already doubled within a year. So it's like, when you bring the power to the people start buying the fridge, buying the TV, and buy everything. So I feel like, yeah, we did something, for the local people, and did something good for them to improve the daily lives. And more importantly, we can bring the renewable power into the daily lives. So I think that's a great thing. So I wanna, put as a close to today my talk is to the future is now. I really urge everybody in this stadium. Energy storage is very, very exciting. It's like 7 o'clock, sunshine, and it's going to happen. It's going to grow big. So I really encourage everybody to pay attention and devote your time and effort into the area, and hopefully we can all have the great and renewable future. Okay, thank you everybody for today's attention. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to our great speakers today. And Dee, can you ask volunteer to set up the stage for our panel discussion? And while we have volunteers set up the panel discussion, there's a bonus for today. Other than 3 great speeches we just heard, we also have an industry, very exciting industry updates from PG&E. There's a cluster 11, no numbers, clusters that just wrapped up last week. Some exciting news, so I will hand the microphone to Wendy.
So we heard several people from the manufacturer, right? And I'm from the utility side. And like Mijie mentioned, there's a multi function for energy storage. Can do a lot of different things. And but how do we really want to compound this this function and into the financial model, and how they can get paid? And this is a really good question. And regarding that question, in fact, California ISO and initiate a stakeholder process that's called energy storage as a transmission asset. And so the stakeholder process is really bring up this question, put people together and from industry, from the entire industry, and think about, and for the energy storage, if we only use energy storage on one purpose, that's a waste of this equipment. And of course, energy storage is still high cost at this moment. It could reduce later. And so that's one thing I encourage everybody, whoever interested in, please go into the California ISO website and go into their stakeholder meeting, and you're gonna find that the topic is called energy storage as a transmission asset, and how to get into the cost recovery mechanism. And that's very complicated. It's about CPUC, CEC, and ISO, and all this involved in this discussion. And we want to get a solution on how to get a good financial model for all the investors, manufacturers, and whoever use them. So that's one thing I want to bring. This is one update. There's no final decision yet. It's just a start the first meeting. And the final decision on the policy should be finalized by the end of this year. So hopefully we can answer that question for Mijie on that. So that's one, a little bit advertising on that stakeholder process, and whoever interested, please join. That's open to public. And there's a lot of material on the ISO website. Although I'm not representing ISO, but as PG&E, I also joined the stakeholder process. So another thing is, I think energy storage developed so fast. And all these products, we hear all these presentations. I think that's faster than everybody can imagine. And you can use your imagination. In the recent cluster 11, that's a generation interconnection process initiated by California ISO, and that's all the PV, solar, renewables, generation, and energy storage. Whoever want to connect to utility transmission grid and should go through that process. We call cluster study. And the reason every year we have one cluster open to everybody, all the developers. And the most recent cluster called cluster 11 just closed the window 2 weeks ago. And I cannot release the exact how many megawatt number to the public yet. That number will be available, I think, another 2 weeks. Probably wait another 2 to 3 weeks, and the number will become public and into the ISO website. And you can use your imagination and how many megawatt of new energy storage project want to connect to PG&E system. I will not tell you the exactly number, but probably let's have I will prepare a small gift for next time. Whoever gives the number closest to the real number, and the next time, please make sure you come here and I can give a gift. So anybody can have just a guess. How many megawatt energy storage want to connect to just a PG&E system, not even including like a SCE or San Diego. I'm not familiar, but for PG&E system, yeah, please.
500.
100. Okay.
No, 500.
Oh, 500. Okay.
500.
Well, I guess like it's triples was the new number last year. Triples.
Last year, I don't remember last year. So give me a number. So that is a 500. Yeah, 500. Anything? 1,000. Okay. What do you think?
3 more.
Yeah, 3 more. Okay, 5,000 is also a number, like 500, 1,000, 5,000, and megawatt. So you mean 5,000 megawatt or? Okay. You give a number, just a number.
Well, 1,500.
1,500. Okay, 1,500. So one more. One chance. Just a guess. 300. Okay, so I will. So whoever already give that number, please make sure next time you still come. And I will have next time I will announce what's exactly number, and I will prepare a gift for whoever closest to that number.
We'll keep a close eye on that. So make sure Wendy get a nice gift. So thanks, Wendy, for the update. Very exciting, lots of developments for people not familiar with the utility side on something as a transmission asset. Basically, that means you have a guaranteed return of investment, right? That's insured. So it's a big deal. All right, let's welcome our speaker back to the stage. Dr. Van Dai, Vic Shao, and Miji Zhang. Let's have about 20 to 30 minutes discussion. And also our co-moderator, Di Shi. Anyway. So now is a question time, and if you have already has a question you would like to ask, raise your hand. Oh yeah. Oh right. It seems there are probably a lot of questions. We're going to have a competition to see who raised their hands highest. So before that, I have the advantage to, as a moderator, to ask the first question. We're talking about applications, good potentials there. I'm interested to learn the economics there. What is the current IRR on most of the projects you are doing? Maybe from both of you, if that can be disclosed.
Sure. I would say behind the meter projects are typically better, less competition. On grid storage side, when you're talking about tens of megawatts, hundreds of megawatts, just like solar, it's whoever is going to be the most aggressive, and the IRRs doesn't really matter. It's whoever that wants to bet the farm. Wants to, because what happens on these 100 megawatt plus projects is that you bid a price today, it doesn't get built for 3 more years. And so the IRR that you project going into it and get credit approvals on, anywhere from 7 to 12% is the range, depends on where you are in the world. But really, 3 years later, what happens is anybody's guess. In the solar side, we have seen that the aggressive developers that really went after the market did extremely well. And when they did, and when they won these projects 7 years ago, 10 years ago, everybody thought they were crazy, and everybody thought they were going to go bankrupt. But as it turns out, they beat everybody else, and companies like Enel, NG, ended up buying those companies or buying those projects. So probably the same thing will happen in storage.
Yes, I think that in terms of IRR, it's really it depends on different region, different market. I mean, you will see different IRR for some of the project. If you have to fix PPA or energy service agreement, we call that ESA. You will see a little bit in terms of lower IRR because there's more certainties in terms of low risk. If you see the project such as purely based on policy, then you see a little bit fluid in there, so the IRR has to be high enough to really justify to people to get some money. Pretty much, it's just got to be expensive money to invest those projects. So pretty much, yes.
Yes, I do have a question. So for different people, we have different perspectives on energy storage. As a very technical person, we at Jurina, we do a lot of research on energy storage. And for us, we think about the challenges. So most likely we are talking about very technical challenges. I believe that for different people, very personally, I mean for technical person, for businessmen, for investors, they see different challenges. So what do you think is the most challenging factor in the development of energy storage for the future?
Yeah, so apparently I'm not an expert in energy storage. I'm just going to give my 2 cents here. I think in terms of the investment that we, speaking of the clean tech funds effort that we're doing, I think the early stage investment before the first death of Valley is really, I think we're getting very hard to start with. And there's the second death of Valley for technology, so I'm assuming that will be another kind of milestone for a lot of companies to survive or maybe go bankruptcy if they don't make it through. So I think that's my just my personal view on that.
In terms of the hurdles and challenges, I mean, maybe different people will take different view on it. But from my perspective, there's the 3 things. First of all, the challenges in terms of how to finance a project. There's the monetization, as I mentioned about, how you're going to get paid. How you measure the energy storage can be a value in every different applications, how you monetize it, and so that it cannot be that fluid when you secure financing, right? Way back on the solar side, if you don't have the right PPA in places, then no one's going to finance you. So the same thing happens with storage. If the return start fluctuating, then of course, the money going to be more expensive, and the return expectation will be very high, and that's going to kill lots of projects. So that's from the financing side, and also from the technology side, I would say there's lots of things we do. You mentioned about there's lots of consolidation. I hate to use the word bankruptcy, because I've been gone through up and down in the solar and the energy storage. It's called consolidation is because new technology in and out. There's exciting new technology. We see slow battery, we see salt water, people in and out. But right now, as you can see, the lithium has become really dominant in the chemistry, storage chemistries, because the volume, the big players behind the scene that are able to really drive the cost down and able to stand behind it. So I think the biggest challenge is in the energy storage and technology perspective is who are staying behind the technology to really back it up, right? So you're looking at asset for 20 years. It's not like 5 years you get money back. You really need somebody who can honor the warranty, that can support your support, right?
There's nothing wrong with technology. That's not a barrier whatsoever, none. I think Missy is completely right. I mean, we have batteries that are warranted by the OEM for 20 years. We have solar panels that that are under 20-year PPAs. I mean, that's good enough. That's good enough. So, what are the challenges? The challenges are financing, as already mentioned. The challenges are setting the right expectation with your customer, and not over-promising, but delivering and executing on what you promised the customer first and foremost. It's not trying to tackle 10 different use cases. It's trying to tackle 1 or 2 and doing it extremely well, proving it in the marketplace. In solar, we use the term bragawatts, right? So same thing in storage. making sure that the numbers that you promise, whether it's to your customer, to the press, to green tech media, you can actually stand behind on actually real numbers. So it's not technology. It's business challenges. It's financing challenges for the most part.
All right, with that, that's a really good question. Good to hear the perspective here. With that, it's open to the audience. All right, here, E.
Well, thank you very much. My question is a direct follow-up to the comment discussion we just had. So for the new technology, I just wonder, so we all agree, like I think battery storage will get cheaper, right? That's really the direction we want to go. And I just wonder, in the race of cost reduction, right? Who would really win in the end, right? So and I'm talking about I'm going to hypothesize two scenarios, like a kind of two potential competitors with lithium-ion battery, right? Because we think similarly with what happened in PV, we understand, as Mitch just said, the more people backing in lithium, there is likely. Okay, guys. Okay, the learning curve will happen, but anyway, so lithium-ion battery versus the new chemistry, right? And then the second scenario is lithium-ion battery and hydrogen storage. I just want you guys commenting on what's the likelihood of who is going to win in the two scenarios and why.
Who is the more technical guy?
Maybe I can talk about it. I mean, I always said future is now, but future is very hard to predict. Who knows 10 years later what kind of battery we're going to use. It's likely 10 years ago, we don't know that lithium can be that big. But I can tell you the lithium, your cell phone, your laptop, everything's lithium. It's more law, the more production, driving the cost to the place that it can be more competitive. I'm not 100% agree. Some people said, for other technology, you don't have to be as good as lithium. You have to be three or four times better than lithium in order for you to compete. I'm not 100% agree, but I think somehow this reflects the situation that with new technology enter into the market, you have to be very, first of all, you have to get to the scale level you can compete. You have to get to the point that you're bankable, so the bank can finance your project. You have to the point that you can prove all this independent engineer that your technology is mature, is prudent, that for over 20 years. That's all the hurdles for any of the new technology into the market. But definitely I think, as we see in the past, that there is always new technology will come in and always will find its way to be successful.
Nothing really more to add other than that's really the only thing that's got scale today. I don't see flow batteries getting to scale anytime soon. I don't see flywheels getting to scale anytime soon. So let's face it, the Chinese government is behind lithium-ion, so I think that's what's going on.
All right. I do know we have audience from the fuel cell company and also from Flywheel, so maybe we can have a heated discussion afterwards. Not now. All right, question there?
Yes, a question to Dr. Guy. In the old Obama administration, under the SNED, Strategic Economic Dialogues, with the Paris Treaty, they have a fund which is about $100 billion with the NDRC and the old Obama administration. So had California inherit that mechanism in your trip to China with the NDRC of Mr. Xie Zhenhua?
Thank you. That's a very good question. We actually started with that question before we went to China last year. And short answer is no. And I don't even know, it's just my personal opinion, and I don't even know if that fund you're talking to and you are referring to, I believe that is the green fund that was established during the Obama administration. The California-China Clean Tech Funds, in a way, I won't describe it as differentiate from the green fund you referred to. It's not a national level bilateral clean tech funds. It's more of a subnational model that would bring in public sector engagement, private sector engagement together. So it's not like NDRC chip in their whatever amount they chipped in for the Green Fund, and the State Department here chip in whatever amount here to establish join the fund. It's different from that scenario. What we are doing here is trying to really, on the one hand, secure some public commitment on this clean technology development in this industry. But on the other hand, and to a larger extent, we want to utilize more private sector capital resources to advance the development of clean technology in both California and China.
Can I continue a second question? Okay, so do you recognize the mechanism of the car cap and trade mechanism with the NDRC too? Besides, I know the fund is not there, but at least the structure, do they agree to the cap and trade scenario and plus a renewable certificate in this California and China effort?
May I just clarify, you're asking about the Chinese adoption of the cap and trade mechanism here and their certificate in terms of trading, or are you thinking?
Or they recognize California can help them to set up a cap and trade renewable certificate mechanism, so at least California and China can recognize the credits, at least there's certain things, because right now the NDRC is stuck with the cap and trade, so they need an external push to kick this off. And right now the new administration or Chairman Xi is very aggressive, but they just don't know how to do it.
Great question. I don't think I'm in a position to say the Chinese does not know how to do cap and trade. And I also, I'm pretty sure that California started working with China on cap and trade while they were doing what is called cap and trade pilots, the 7 pilots in China back in 2013. So right now, if you're talking about any linkage in terms of whether or not the certificates developed in China would be recognizable in California, the short answer is no. Because when we are talking about linkage, there is only so far 2 cap and trade markets that are directly linked to California cap and trade. These are both are in Canada, Ontario and Quebec. We have not yet discussed with China whether or not we are linking the cap and trade markets with them or not. And beyond that, the certificate question, I do not think that's in any of our existing discussion with them. But I think you just raised a very good question, and I think the Chinese do know how to run their cap and trade market. The real question, in my personal view, is in China, in its current national cap and trade market, there's only one sector covered, only the power sector covered. So that's the actual question for them to answer to themselves, how big the market will be, and how do they want to really implement the certificate system in other sectors beyond power sector. And then we can pick up that discussion with them later on.
What? Is that good? All right, next question. Come from here.
Yeah, I will have a very brief question. How many types of major energy storage? Okay, so we talk about battery. Also, if we consider hydropower, also is the energy storage. And in China, very popular 综合能源利用 is multiple energy resources combination, include gas, electric, the heater system and the cooling system. For example, Stanford have an energy innovation system. They save the energy to the container, contain the hot water and the cold water. So it's also energy storage. So the question is, how many major energy storage?
Like
I can speak. Yeah, this is a very broad topic. Regarding the median of the energy storage, we completely agree that there's a lot of different median for stored energy in the heat, in the form of heat, in the form of the chemistry, in the form of the hydropower, gravity, anything. So I think that how do you determine what type of median you're going to use is by application, by how fast you want to dispatch your stored energy into the grid. So there's different form. I agree with you, it's all resource competition and generation as well. I think that's where the future energy network is going to evolve, is every resource will have a play in the well-connected energy internet and be enabled by a different type of smart technology, and also for the future blockchain or any type of the Internet of the Things, that will be enabler for all these energy resources and the media.
I have a quick answer to that: chemistry and the non-chemistry. Yeah, so that can be found, information found probably online as well. Maybe there are new energy storage technology developed in the future. So let's probably don't extend on that. We can have a discussion afterwards and leave time for more questions. I'm gonna have a question here first.
Okay.
Can you speak loudly enough?
Sure.
Shout.
So I have a question for Mr. Zhang from Sanguro. Thanks for sharing the information about the JV you guys did with Samsung SDI. I think that was very exciting. So my question specifically is that what does that mean to the third-party integrators or other battery suppliers? Do you guys still work with them anymore?
Well, that's I've been asked a lot of times. I mean, I first I call that is marriage, right? It's marriage. But the business is business. Business can be carried in different forms and in different ways. That I think that the really driven power is behind what customer really needs and how we can deliver the value to the customer. It doesn't really matter who we're working with, right? What kind of media we do and what type of equipment we sell. It's not the problem. The problem is what kind of value we can bring to the customers. Am I answering your question?
Let's leave it there. Yeah, let's leave it there. Next question.
I'll just leave out.
Thank you. I actually have two quick questions. The first question is for Vic. Sorry to interrupt you. First question is for Vic. So in the family of NG, how would that affect the business strategy of GCN? So the second question is for Miju. What is that you introduced quite a lot Chinese-based projects, which is very impressive. My question is, what is the business strategy in the U.S. market? Thank you.
Sure. As it relates to NG, I think, and it's really not a unique, situation with wind charge, because a lot of times big companies buy small little ones and they think that magically everything is gonna work nicely together, and it really it doesn't. It's hard work, just like a marriage, I suppose. But there is a great deal of opportunity, because all of a sudden green charge can sell internationally, get into multiple 100-megawatt-hour projects. So there is the opportunity. That's wonderful. The challenge is the integration, and it's a different pace, and it's a different set of criteria for how we used to do projects together. So the way that we used to do project approval is literally just a 5-minute phone call from somebody, from a business developer, from a sales guy to me, and in a 5-minute window I make a decision, do we move forward or not. And now, obviously very different, right? How do we approve a 100-megawatt project being built in Mongolia? I mean, it's a very different approval process, and it's multiple months, credit reviews, and Paris headquarters has to be involved for sure, and it's not just once; it's 5 different times. So it's different, but it does add a structure to the process that admittedly I was lacking at the time. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question exactly, but it's not very unique to green charging, I don't think.
Yeah, so I think your question was asking about business strategy for Sunbrook in the North America, right? So yes, we as I mentioned, we had the JV restart production. I think in October 2016. It's about a year and a half now. So in the 2017, we Sungrow, umbrella of Sungrow on the storage side, we delivered about 30 megawatts hour worth of project into the United States, including all this, in Ontario, Canada, in ERCOT, in California, Arizona, PV plus storage. And for this year's on a contract right now, we've already more than 100 megawatts hour of the project has been already on a contract under this way. So this year we face quite a challenges because there's lots of capacity constraint on the battery manufacturers, and we see quite challenging to deliver our product in time. And for long term, as I said, we position ourselves as innovation leader in terms of power conversions, but also we do a lot of integrations with best technologies, put a control on batteries and inverter all together. So I think the big picture behind the integration is often compared with the solar side, solar is fairly easy to integrate compared with energy storage, because energy storage you will have the control, you have the battery, you have a lot of communication, you have a lot of components, has to be well designed into the system. So there's optimization process in the process. So I think what the market really needs is somebody who is stronger, has very strong billion-dollar balance sheet, stand behind it to really support that product. Really support that product. So I think that's a play for Sungrow in terms of big picture strategy.
Thanks. I know there are a lot of questions. We also want to leave time for people to have more interactive discussion. Let's just leave time for maybe 2-3 more questions, and then we're gonna have open discussion.
Thank you very much. My question is to Dr. Dai. I'm working for California Public Utilities Commission, and really, we interact with your office a little bit before. I just want to know, use an example first. Like in California, we legalize the marijuana, but in the federal level, they say no, you cannot do that, right? So I just want to know, try to seek some clarifications from governance level. How do we, differentiate, interact with the federal level governmental entities when we deal with this relationship between China and California? Thank you.
I'm going to try my best to answer your question in a way as an attorney. So I think, by defining in the Constitution in the United States, state, has its own say on interstate commerce. But when it comes to interstate commerce, which a lot of times when Chinese companies trying to find their investment project in the US, they, as I mentioned, California has been the #1 destination for them to consider. But normally what they would do is they would consider 3 to 5 sites, maybe 1 in California, 2 in other states, maybe in New York and other places. And also depending on what nature of the project would be. For example, if it's a renewable, say it's a solar project, that is, they're looking at California side, they're looking at Nevada, they're looking at New York. California only, what we can do here is really to do our best to assist the Chinese companies with their needs if they are looking at opportunities in California, to assist them in terms of site selection, in terms of tax benefits, incentives that we can provide for every company's business in California with no discrimination for foreign companies. But what happens a lot is when company in this process of decision making, they will start their what they call due diligence on their side. They will look into the project, they will look into the site in California and other places. Depending on where they're thinking about to build a solar project, that might raise national security concern at the national level. That is where what we as a state cannot have decision on, where we leave to the CFIUS, which is the federal committee, to decide whether or not if they can find any national security threat on the specific site that they're deciding between. I don't know if I answered your question already, but I think that's where mostly case-by-case situation, and as a state, we're not trying to intervene any jurisdictions that federal government has their own say, but we're trying our best.
Very well. So the next question over there. Persistent.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for Rick, actually. You talk about, you shared a story about, you with the story about with your partner. My question is about the partnership in an established company. So if you get a chance to do it all over again, are you still going to have a partner in your company? Or you just, because of the bad experience, you're just going to decide, okay, I got to do it on my own. In other words, can you give some suggestion to someone who's trying to find a partner, or just, we all know that partnership is very important, just, yeah, that's pretty much my question. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just quickly, I just couldn't help. I kind of feel we're in a relationship or marriage but anyway, I want to hear the advice too.
Sure, no easy answer on this one, unfortunately. Entrepreneurship is a really lonely occupation, right? Look, there are things that I wish I can talk to my wife about, but I really can't because she won't understand. She just won't. Same is true for a business partner. If you're in business together with somebody, there are things that the two of you discuss that nobody else in the world will have a clue about what you're facing. And when I meet other entrepreneurs, whether it's in clean tech or in other lines of business, it's an instant bonding experience. It really is, because we've been there. We know what we are talking about. Certain scenarios that we bring up. It's scenarios that we've encountered that nobody else will understand. So I think there is a support, from a support perspective, if for somebody who's thinking about going into entrepreneurship, I think it's helpful to have some support there that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of. From a efficiency perspective, it also depends on what you're about to get yourself into. There are going to be scenarios where a business is highly technical and you need to have a technical co-founder to help you sell. I was an engineer a long time ago, 100 years ago, and finally now I'm really just on the road. I'm just a traveling salesman these days more than anything else. But it depends on what your personal strengths are and whether you need to have somebody that can help balance you in the enterprise that you're about to start up. But ultimately, the way that you have to decide is just on efficiency and how is it that's going to get your idea moving in a marketplace as soon as possible. And everything hinges on, I think, that. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you start up something and you have a lot of dependencies that you cannot do anything about. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but those are just some thoughts as you make your decision.
Let's give it to maybe that area. Yeah. So last question.
The policy and economic landscape between US and China are pretty different. So the behind-the-meter projects, I think, will work better here in California because of the active incentives and stuff like that. In California, the TOU window arbitrage is not that wide, and the opportunities to make money in the behind-the-meter space in China may not be that great. So similarly for market participation in China, because the wholesale market is not open yet, it may not be a very good landscape in China. So I just want to get a sense from you, how do you think the opportunities for applications for storage is going to develop in China in the future? And if you were to specialize in one application, what would you choose?
Okay. Okay. Usually I don't speak on behalf of my colleague in China because they probably do a better job than I do. Yeah, I think that's a great question. In California we have CSEE program that's big enabler for project making sense, but the Chinese market right now has not been fully opened up in terms of the wholesales. But again, give you a few factors that China right now is the largest EV manufacturer with gigawatts hour of battery has been installed. So as follow the nature of the businessman thinking about 5 years later, when those batteries will get retired to embrace the second life of battery, what are they going to do? The government is going to do something to really promote it, right? So from a business perspective, I think the biggest market in China in the future would be, on the distributed side, the PV plus storage. That's where I think the local government will still really promote and have a certain policy, and that's one aspect. Another important aspect is, for China, southern grid or northern grid, now they're already looking into monetize the energy storage as part of the asset to manage it, to really embrace the idea to put a frequency regulation for the first and second degree frequency regulation. So this is an initiative they're taking that for energy storage. So that's my thoughts around it, right?
Yeah, so we're building a business case now for behind the meter that works without electricity at all whatsoever. It works in Massachusetts right now. It's, I think, going to work even in some places that I never thought would be economical anytime soon. Denver, for example, in Excel Energy's territory, we're running into situations where, again, it's economical without any sort of subsidies, other than perhaps, the ITC tax credit. Just using that alone is enough. So I think in the U.S. there's plenty to do, but I will agree with you. Outside of U.S., the situation is going to look very different. China in particular. The application is probably going to be about renewable integration more than anything else. Renewable integration is a pretty hot topic, not just in China, but Latin America, Mongolia, Tibet. I mean, you could have done that project without storage. So I think renewable integration, if there was one, I would say renewable integration is probably going to be the most urgent need.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thanks again. Thank our speakers for coming from all the way from Sacramento and here. Let's have our social, take a picture. Yeah. We'll have some social networking tab, and I think drinks are still provided out there. If not, shout to the